FPL have announced 3 huge changes coming to the game this year: defensive contributions, double chips, and new global elite leagues. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into them. Let's get into it. So let's start with defensive contributions introduced. This is what FPL have had to say. Any defender who reaches a combined total of 10 clearances, blocks, interceptions, and tackles, CBIT, in a single match will score 2 FPL points, this being capped at 2 points per match. They go on to say to recognise the defensive work by midfielders and forwards, including pressing and transitioning defence into attack, they get rewards that defenders don't. In addition to their clearances, blocks, interceptions and tackles, their ball recoveries will also count towards their total of defensive contributions, CBIRT, capped at 2 points per match. So why have FPL done this? FPL actually says it themselves. FPL has really been a game focused on attacking threat. There hasn't been much reward for defenders and their contributions to the game apart from the attacking threat side. So even when picking defenders, we're looking at players like fullbacks or high XG centre backs who are a threat from set pieces. So if you look at the list that I've put on screen, also these would have been the highest scoring points with this new system from last season, the best scoring players. So James Tarkowski is at the top of that list. So there would have been times a few of us might have had him last year. He was sort of fill our bench. But this, an extra 44 points per season, he suddenly becomes a serious option. I think as you move down the list also, you can see what it's done to sort of defensive midfielders as well, which beforehand, none of us really consider defensive midfielders. It's for FPL. It's one of my first rules when I pick a fantasy league team is that you don't pick a defensive midfield player. But now you've got the likes on this list of Moises Caicedo, Elliot Anderson, a bit more attacking, but more of a box-to-box player. Same with João Gomez a little bit. Idrissa Gueye, holding midfielder. Even Christian Norgard, who's just gone to Arsenal, on there as well. So it actually I think this could really bring in a lot more players and give us a lot more options, certainly when we're looking to fill out our bench. So I think it's going to be a big rethink in our philosophies and how we play FPL. Like I said before, my number one rule was no CDMs, but now if we need a little enabler to fill our teams and give us the budget we need to buy these top players, because I think the predictions are going that we're going to have some highly priced players this season. We're going to need players like this, and the fact that they can actually have an extra avenue to these points could be a big benefit to us. The game's changed considerably over the last 10 years, certainly with fullbacks. When you think back to the Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson, when they first started, their flying fullback days with assists, double-digit assists every season. I think it was about time FPL caught up to that, because that become the norm and that become the template for the way we picked our teams. We were always looking for these attacking fullbacks, and we weren't given a look into some of the centre-backs. There was some centre-backs that you wouldn't even consider. I think the other thing it's going to do, looking at this on average, it's going to give some of these players an extra 25 to 40 points per season. It makes our bench players, more viable here, like the Jan Bednariks and Wout Vass, both from relegated teams. If you add an extra, as you see, 34, 40 points to them, it makes these weaker teams a lot more viable options. And I think we'll take a bit more consideration to who we pick on our benches this year. Obviously, these weaker teams and these players playing for these weaker teams are going to get more opportunities to score through this new point system because they're defending a lot more. So as you look, the clearances, the blocks, interceptions and tackles, they're going to be doing a lot more of this, certainly against these top teams. And obviously when these lower teams play these top teams, in defence, we're usually not considering them at all. So I think this is going to change the landscape of FPL quite a bit. One of the big things of note as well is the defensive contributions needed for a midfielder is 12. As I read before, it's 10 for a defender, but 12 for a midfielder. So they will need to contribute two more times defensively to get these extra 2 points. But they have that extra avenue, remember, with the ball recoveries. In terms of tracking these points, points will be seen in the pages, in the match page as well, and matches in progress, but no live totals. So we can go onto the FPL app, we can see when a player has achieved these 2 points during the match, but we won't see any running totals during the game. It's probably a bit of a step too far. You're going to have somebody on that all the time, and it would be constantly updating for every player. So I can understand why a live running total isn't really feasible. But at least we can see when those points have been activated. So I can imagine we're all going to be watching these games now, just counting up clearances, blocks from our FPL defenders. So it's a big change to the game, and it's gonna give us a big rethink. And mixed in with the upcoming change that we're just about to talk about, I think it's really gonna spice things up. So let's move on to the next part. So also double chips have been announced for the new season, meaning managers in fantasy will now have 2 sets of chips to play in the 2025-26 season. Similar to the use of the first wildcard in recent seasons, the first set of chips must be played before the game week 19 deadline passes at 6:30 GMT on Tuesday the 30th of December. They cannot be carried over into the second half of the 25-26 season. So firstly, good riddance to the assistant manager chip, I believe, which is going to be nice. I don't think a lot of us like that. So it's a good riddance to that. Again, it's going to be a big change to a lot of FPL philosophies. There'll be no more saving that triple captain for the second half of the season, just like a lot of us do also with our bench boost and our free hits. It just becomes a big storage war, really, and we tend to save these for when we really need them, when the double game weeks come in the second half of the season. So we're going to actually have these we're going to have a set of chips that we have to use in that first half of the season, which is, I think this is a more impressive addition compared to the defensive contribution ones, in my personal opinion. It also gives us a chance to mess up our triple captain twice in one season, which is a good prospect for us all. But the likelihood of first half of the season double game weeks has always been very low. So, I think there's going to be a greater dispersion of how people use these chips, certainly in that first half of the season. Same with the free hit and the bench boost again as well. We're going to be focusing on what players we have and their single game weeks rather than their doubles. FPL state it themselves. So if you'd prefer to use the chip on Mohamed Salah, the Liverpool talisman has 2 home matches against the promoted clubs in the first half of the season. One against Sunderland game week 14, Leeds in game week 19. Similarly, Bukayo Saka faces Leeds in game week 2, while Cole Palmer plays Sunderland in game week 9. And Newcastle United's Alexander Isak hosts Burnley in game week 15. So, there's a lot of different ways that we can end up playing this, and I think it's really gonna work nicely. I do love the change a lot. There's going to be a small amount of people who were considering that first game week bench boost. That suddenly becomes a little bit more viable because you're not wiping it for the whole season like in previous seasons. There was a bit of talk going into the new season that people would do that. So it suddenly becomes a good option. You can set that team up with a solid bench for that first game week, hit the bench boost, and know you've got another bench boost coming for the second half of the season, and the ability to use all your other chips for the first half of the season. So, you know, it's going to be chaos in a good way in that first half of the season, I think. Also, with the rule that changed last year where you can roll up to 5 free transfers, this adds another element, and I think it's really going to add a bigger gap between the casual manager and the invested FPL manager. You know, we all have that one friend in our mini leagues who seems to use maybe one chip all season. Gets to the end of the season, like, oh, I didn't even realize I didn't use that chip. So I do honestly think there'll be a bit more of a dispersion between the invested manager, like I say, and the casual manager. So let me know in the comments what you think is the most exciting change to FPL this season out of those two. For me, it's the double chips. The last change we're going to move on to now, not quite as exciting, but certainly worth the update as well. So finally, we've got new elite global leagues, and this has been compared to qualifying for European football in FPL. So you've got the top 1% league, which is probably kind of like the Champions League, and you've got the top 10% league, which is kind of the Europa League. Managers who finished in the top 114,319, they've qualified for the top 1% league. This is going from last season's results. Managers who finished in the top 1,143,193 places, you've qualified for the top 10% league. So this can be found in your general league section when you go and you look at your team when the game launches. It's a nice little addition where you can still win more FPL prizes, but I think it's unlikely most of us will get to that level, I hate to say, but we can only hope. I think it's more considered just a nice little badge of honour, I think, from the previous season. If you've managed to qualify for it, I think that's all it is. It's good for recognition for a good season. The importance of it is down to each individual, I think. It's good for overall rank managers. It shows how well you've done last season. But to me, it's probably not quite as important to those of you who are just aiming to win your own mini leagues. You're focusing on beating your friends and your mates. Your overall rank isn't that important to you. You know, that's been my goal for the last few years. I've always been a mini league sort of manager, but the last season and possibly a little bit before that is where I really started to focus a little bit more on overall rank and trying to compete with the elite, should we say. So it's a nice little addition, another way to win prizes, but like I say, let me know if you're excited for it. It's just a nice little addition, that's all pretty much. So thanks for joining me for that little update. If you did like the video, please hit subscribe, hit like, hit all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. I really want to grow this channel and make it better and better for you guys. So your support will be really important to me. We've got to be really close to launch now. Surely next week after, absolute max. And things are going to start ramping up. We can all get excited about getting that first team together. So join the movement, and I'll see you guys next time.